Welcome, baseball fans. It's time once again for the Running the Bases podcast. I'm Tucker Wells, joined as always by Coach Jordan Bounds. We have a big topic to get to today about Cuban baseball in Cuba and Cuban players. But before that, out of the box, we had the international draft. I did not get to follow this too closely, but the Braves made a big haul.
Well, they got Maton, the guy that they were rumored to be the number one prospect in the international draft, another shortstop, but
we have.
But apparently, I saw some films. This guy looks like Jason Hayward. I mean, tremendous. I mean, he's five tools. It looks like you can't see somebody like that being short. I mean, that'd be like A-Rod.
And the idea is to move him to third.
Yeah, well, a lot of people are saying that now, but and he's only 16, but he's huge. The Braves made a good haul. They got 5 of the top 30 players in the international, or the top 30 prospects in the international draft.
Yeah, and
they got a catcher that's real high up on the list.
Thank the good Lord, because certainly I saw a stat from the very same Fort Bragg game that we were just talking about, that Tyler Flowers is 2 for 25 on throwing out runners.
Yeah,
that's not going to get it done. But the international draft, complicated rules, but this is the last year that a team like the Braves is going to be able to make such a haul, right?
Apparently, we think that it's going to be changed with the collective bargaining agreement. We went up this year. I mean, the Padres got 6 of the top 30. They didn't get. We still had supposedly a higher signing of this. The Phillies got a lot of players. I think those 3 teams got half of the top 30 players, and that's because teams like the Red Sox and the Dodgers and the Yankees and these teams who normally bid a lot on these players couldn't bid at all this year over about a $300,000 per player per diem, or what, I don't know how exactly what you would call it. It's not a per diem, but they're limited because they've gone over in the previous year.
Right. Yeah. It's
the Braves would not be able to invest that much in next year, but there apparently isn't going to be this sort of draft next year.
Right. Yeah. Trying to find the exact. This is how you determine how many picks you have, and it's a stipend, perhaps. Is that the one-time payment?
They can get as many as they can. They're allowed. I mean, both the Padres and the Braves have been trading people in the last couple of years for international money to be able to use in this draft. Now they still go over, which makes me wonder, why did they need to get this money to begin with if they're going to go over?
Right.
But they're bidding wars against each other. This is not like a draft. This is like, woohoo, let's go get them.
More like an auction?
Well, more like it used to be. Bonus babies and things, from the early 50s and whatnot.
Right. Which I didn't realize that's how Roberto Clemente ended up on the Pirates.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, your favorite player. One of mine. All right. So a lot of the teams you just mentioned in said international draft are not doing so well this present season and over the last few seasons, hence why they have so many draft picks. But across the board,
they weren't draft picks. It was money, international monies. They're not picks.
Well, why do they call it a draft then? Just for the sake of marketing?
I guess. I'm not certain. I mean, because their players still aren't signed, and we don't know if they will sign, and they could be bidding against other clubs. It's a bizarre situation.
Clearly. Well, then I'm now instantly thankful that the new CBA will hopefully clean this up, because I'm confused, to say the least.
I can't imagine that teams like the Red Sox and the Dodgers and the Yankees and these teams like being in a position where they're not competitive with other clubs.
Right. Yeah, and the lone element that I am aware of is that you have a budget, and once you spend it, you have to wait for it to clear
another
out
year, and you have to go over that budget to sign these people. Braves signed. I mean, it was a big news. A couple of their players, they signed for a lot of money over the bracket, and everything to get them. Maton being one.
Yeah, who is from Cuba.
Right.
Well, so we'll see how it shakes out. But I as a Braves fan, I'm glad we got. We did so well in the bidding process in this not a draft. So,
however, I still, they're 16 years old.
Yeah.
It's, hold your breath.
Yeah, exactly. A couple of other things out of the box. This is a big issue this year, attendance. down across the board. For you personally, what do you see as the main reason why, and why is this so alarming?
Why? Everybody's always, at this point of the year, is going to point to weather, being a problem in certain places. But we only have 9 teams that are up. And
From last year. 9 teams with their attendance being better average.
Yes. And in some of those, Toronto and the Cubs, this is to be expected. But
Houston.
Houston. There are a couple that are, I'm not certain why. It may very well be, the Angels and Toronto and Tampa Bay, they're both up. We look at Tampa Bay and Oakland, we figure their attendance isn't going to be good.
Right. We pencil that in.
But Cleveland they've been 29th for like 3 years in a row, and their attendance is down, not by much, but it's still down. We can look at Oakland and Tampa Bay and say that they're bottom dwellers. That
perennially.
Right, and they don't have ballparks, progressive ballparks. But Cleveland has just refurbished a wonderful ballpark. They have an exciting, young, talented team, and they can't draw anybody.
They're in first place and had a 14-game winning streak.
And their attendance is down. This is... and now, granted, during this 14-game winning streak, it did go up some.
I was going to say that in the case of Cleveland, considering the finals just concluded and the all of the state being consumed probably with the basketball run, that it maybe by the end of the year
doesn't
it will
explain
be
why
up.
they were in 29th place last year
or the year before that.
Right. Baltimore is a team that is going down every year. They're down over 3,000, over 3,500 people a game this year. Another first place team.
Right.
And
division winner in 20 no the playoff run in 2014.
Right. They are an exciting young team that's good for the community, but they continue to decline.
In the case of Baltimore, like specifically this year, would you attribute how last year with all the civic unrest and the rioting going on that maybe the good citizens of Baltimore just don't feel safe at a downtown ballpark?
I don't want to say that. Cause I'm not being there, I can't really say that. That's something I think you'd have to have a feel for. I don't want to say that.
I don't want to say that either, but...
when has anybody ever felt safe going to a game in Detroit?
Right.
St. Louis, there's some areas real close to the ballpark that you don't want to be late at night.
Yeah.
Bonfire of the Vanities. But
and apparently Atlanta too. Hence why they're
right.
they're tucking tail and headed for Cobb County.
But so I don't know. The game needs to address this. Declining attendance has got to be baseball's number one concern. It's got to be any sport's number one concern if your attendance is going down.
Right.
Right now you got to expect Houston and Texas and Toronto. I think Toronto has the biggest increase this year, and the Cubs. But there aren't that many teams that are in that position. Even the Cardinals are down.
Yeah, that's stop the presses stuff right there. But I will say about the Cardinals, having just been there recently, their ticket structure is so confusing and convoluted, and it varies game to game. I just think that the way that tickets are structured and priced on the primary market does not make it friendly for trying to get a good seat to a ball game through the primary market.
As of this time, the Cardinals are down over 2,600 people a game. I don't think there are that many people that are confused as to how to get a ticket.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
I'm throwing out factors here.
All right.
Beyond that, though, I look at,
Well, I expect the Braves to be down. And
this year,
and
yeah,
Cincinnati
absolutely.
and Philadelphia and these teams, you would expect. Actually, I think Philadelphia is one of the ones that's up. They are. But these teams, the Brewers are, they've been abysmal in their attendance recently.
It's not as if, the Cleveland fan base that sold out 455 games in a row there was no plague that I'm aware of that went through Cleveland and wiped out that entire population. So is the disconnect, I mean, this disconnect exists, but we can't be very far from reconnecting it. Same thing in Toronto. You give a winning product, and now Toronto is
exactly. That's
back
why I'm
up.
saying you expect Atlanta and Cincinnati and these teams and the Brewers and teams like this that are tanking to their attendance to be down. But Cleveland and Baltimore, I mean, there's something else going on in some of these cities where we have teams that are succeeding in new ballparks that shouldn't have, with exciting teams, and they're drawing less people. Then there's an issue there.
Is it similar to football in the sense that it's better on the product is better on television? And then is it as simple as saying just prices are out of control? I mean, we still are at a precedent where taking a family of 4 to a baseball game can cost upwards of $250.
I don't know. I don't know. That would, I mean, it's not for me to draw the conclusions. But I'm looking. I mean, attendance is down in Boston. Attendance is down in Boston.
That's
not a good sign. I expect it to be down in New York right now. I mean, for the Yankees, it's way up for the Mets. As again you would expect.
Yankees, I think, is cost straight up.
Right. Well,
we'll see.
There's a real exciting team to go watch right now.
Oh no, absolutely
I don't want to
not.
go see Sabathia throw for 3 innings.
No, and I don't want to see A-Rod hit only against left-handers, and and still go 1 for 5, but whatever it is. Well, it is a big issue to be addressed, and I don't. It's kind of shocking to me because the other sports have so priced out their fans that you would think baseball would be wise to such things and try and make it more affordable across the board, but we shall see. And then finally, out of the box, and this will take us into our first to third, Jose Reyes is been acquired by the Mets, and the Mets are about to bring him up. He served out his 52-game suspension for the domestic violence incident, and he had an unconditional release from Colorado. What's your initial reaction to the Mets bringing him up? I mean, Wilmer Flores is doing quite well, and now he's going to lose at-bats to this, hot-headed shortstop. So
I think the Mets going out and getting Reyes they're throwing in the towel to getting Guerrilla Uliski. They don't have the resources to go out and pay for a free agent like this, a significant impact free agent.
And this is the player that's batting third on the Cuban national team.
Right, who Cespedes was all over. He wanted there. I mean,
right.
And all of the Cuban players, there have been a lot of flops, Cuban flops, and I guess we'll get to that in a little bit. But this guy supposedly is the real deal. Last year in the Cuban League, he hit 500.
That's pretty
500. Good. I don't care what league. Sure, it's the Cuban League. There's some good pitchers that are coming from the Cuban League. I think his on base was like 584, or something. These are sick numbers. Now, there are so many reasons not to go after this guy. They say he's 32.
It's probably
maybe. And he hasn't played in the major leagues before, but the Mets, who really need another significant bat, whose own team is saying go get this guy. They're not getting this guy for Cespedes to leave at the end of the year.
Right, because he has that very bizarre contract.
Right. This not getting him was significant. And so who do they go get? Another Cuban.
Yeah. What do you think the fan reaction will be for Reyes, starting with the hometown?
Hometown, always forgive.
Right. And everywhere else he goes, he'll get booed profusely. Right. I guess, real quick, do you think he'll be productive?
No, I don't think he hadn't been productive in years.
Yeah, agreed.
Toronto was going to cut him anyway.
Right, yeah, and rightfully so.
Colorado.
Yeah. Well, as it stands, he is the poster child for this wrath. Is that the rash? The rash of domestic violence incidents happening with baseball players who, by and large, they are Cuban-born, Latin-born, and so that takes us to our first to third, baseball in Cuba. right now in the game, there's this movement to make baseball fun again. And you have these players coming from Cuba, and they're meeting with resistance from kind of the old guard. What is your first take on adopting a Cuban style of baseball in America?
No, we'll never adopt a Cuban style of baseball in America.
Welcoming or adapting to.
Never. Will we be accepting of certain players that play with a little bit more flash? We should. I mean, I think you weigh Brian Harper versus Brian McCann, Bryce Harper versus Brian McCann, and we see where allegiances lie in these times. I grew up playing baseball in Tampa with a bunch of Cuban players in these RYL leagues. I think we went in search of one of those.
We did when we were down. Yeah.
And there was an entirely different style. Even at an early age, when you hit the ball in the outfield, you ran until they got you out. There was no base. That was like a place you stopped while they turned and went the other way. Base running was truly an art. At an early age, a lot more flash, throwing bats and things. Arms flailing. I don't know how to express it, but there was a part of this where it was so different from what you saw anywhere else, but it really kind of embraced the aesthetic that is part of what baseball is. It's part of the beauty of the game. It's what separates it from football and hockey and all of these other pseudo sports or pseudo arts. It's what makes baseball an art. And the Cuban culture seems to embrace this.
Sure.
Hopefully that, as the melting pot of of America, bringing all these different cultures and bringing them together, that should make the MLB better. Now, Cubans have been there forever.
If you go into the history of it, their history is as long in years and as rich as baseball in America.
Right. It's not like we went and barnstormed in Cuba and they're saying, "Oh, let's play this," on the Pacific Rim and that sort of stuff. They've been there. There were players in the 19th century in the major leagues that were Cuban players, significant players. So I think the inversion of this Cuban style, it's been around for a long time. It has been criticized for a long time. Part of the Latin culture, this flair, is one of the reasons that Clemente was, abused for quite some time.
Yeah, but, and thrown at. And
the Cubans, you were talking about the spousal abuse and things that have been put on Chapman and several different
Hector Olivera.
We have to look at, these are guys that in the Cuban Baseball Federation, they make anywhere from $40 to $200 a month. Your Chapmans and people may make $200 a month. And they leave illegally with human smugglers and corrupt agents, taking them to another country, to Haiti or somewhere, before they can come into the United States. Very perilous path leaving Cuba and by small boats and stuff. And then suddenly this $40 a month is millions.
Right.
And they're coming from this third world culture where they just haven't been exposed. It's such a culture shock to them. And we laugh at people like Cespedes driving up in some new freakish car every day to spring training and stuff. But this is something, rather than laugh at somebody like this, why isn't Tony Perez setting up a commission to help these ball players, adjust to the new culture that they're in?
Well, how much responsibility do you place on Major League Baseball to influence and guide that?
I don't think Major League Baseball can do it. I think there have to be other Cuban ball players that have played in the past do it. I think the players, the Tony Olivas and the Tony Perezes and even the Palmeros and
right.
who they should try and be helping out their fellow countrymen.
Well, the NFL has this
Only because their countrymen are going to listen to them. Not that Major League Baseball, can do what they can. But is Yasiel Puig? Did he listen to Mattingly? Did he listen to anybody else there?
No.
Would he have listened to another Cuban? Perhaps.
Right.
Would he listen to Cespedes? Maybe.
Well, you look at how the NFL has the rookie symposium, and they have rookie classes that they're required to take to adjust to life in the pros.
And boy, has that cleaned up the NFL. They're a bunch of fine citizens now. No convictions there ever.
Truly exemplary.
What, 10 times what it is in any other major league sport?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, that there's a rabbit hole that we could go down for the violent aspect. But in baseball, is this something that should be necessary? Should Manfred et al. Look at, okay, we need to make sure that these international players coming from these third world countries that have such trouble adjusting, that there has to be a broad, for each team, there has to be this kind of culture, American culture ingratiation or acclimation.
By the way, something we said earlier, I think Maton is Venezuelan.
Oh, I could look that up.
But
you do have players who have a specific, Puig has an interpreter. I mean, the superstars have somebody a personal assistant dedicated to them while they're with the team, while they're.
This is a problem that's bigger than Major League Baseball. I mean, we're talking about a culture 90 miles off our coast that is really backwards in a lot of way and abusive in what it is. We all know the problems of Cuba, and to take a young person unexposed to many things and saying, by the way, you'll never see your family again, you'll never be able to send money home to your parents, and you're not Cuban anymore, you're and then to throw and by the way, here's $50 grillion, go do whatever you want,
right?
And we expect them to act like it's a cultural difference that is it's greater than being Dominican. It's greater than being Venezuelan or any of these other cultures. This is something totally different.
Well, when you dive into the history of baseball in Cuba, of course, history being the great storyteller, at one point, baseball was nationalized over bullfighting. Bullfighting was, because of the Spanish origins of the country itself, that was the nationalized sport. That's what was considered the highest regard. The fact that it became baseball, I believe there could be the inception of this matador mentality when baseball becomes more popular than bullfighting. And maybe that can be the seeds
South
of this.
South American bullfighting is not what Spanish bullfighting is. I'm sorry. And I don't want to go do a whole segment on bullfighting.
Right.
But now the kind of godlike presence that some matadors have in a culture that has existed in Cuba. From what I understand, Orlando Cepeda's father, Cha-Cha's father, I think, who was also Cha-Cha One or something, I don't know, but he was he was like a Picasso. He could go in and just sign his name, and that's all he had to do to pay for anything.
Right.
It has existed. I don't think it exists now. I don't think Abreu is going back to. And we do. I think much of baseball's popularity now comes, as we know, from Fidel. He wanted to be a major league ball player, was in the Senators chain and everything, and he has always really liked baseball and boxing. And so there's no and volleyball. And what are the three big sports in? Soccer or football is really increasing in popularity.
But it runs a distant third to boxing and baseball, yeah.
I don't know that it does anymore. I think it's up there. In comparison to other Latin American countries, there's no comparison. I think the problems right now that Major League Baseball, we just had Obama just went to Cuba in the last couple of months and goes to a game and he's there with Raul and all this sort of stuff, and they're the head of the Baseball Federation in Cuba comes out with all these statements saying we want all of our players to go play in the major leagues and to make
Right.
and all of the players in the Cuban players they totally don't trust this guy. What's his name again? Higino Velez. He's was saying that it's just a shame that it's different between Dominicans and Haitians and people from the islands and all these people going to the major leagues because a Cuban gives up his dignity, he gives up his life. He's no longer Cuban. He can't come back and see us. He's saying like, give our federation a lot of money. And,
right. Yeah.
And that's part of the thing now, and where Obama and Castro are kind of using baseball as a way of kind of uniting Cuba and the United States, stopping this embargo. Cuba has lessened its restrictions. Both Puig and Abreu came in last year with some other Cuban players on a goodwill tour. This is totally unheard of a couple of years earlier.
Sure.
So some of this is breaking down. But in the meantime, we have 150 players a year leaving this island by essentially drug smugglers
and trafficking, human
right.
trafficking. Yeah.
We've had and people that have been held up. Their families have been
held hostage.
Yeah, right.
Sure,
It's atrocious. And we're not. We don't like that, but I don't see any signs on Cuba being ready to alleviate this problem.
Right. Well, we should look into the history of baseball in Cuba, because what we're essentially discussing is there's a watershed moment, and that is the revolution in 1959, 1960. Castro assumes power, because before in the 1960s you had professional leagues in Cuba, and the amateur leagues were always very popular. I mean, there were the bloodline of baseball in Cuba. You had these sugar mill leagues where the factory workers would use baseball. They would play on weekends when they weren't working in the sugarcane fields, and that's where the greatest talent came from, and that's where the greatest passion for the game was shown. But there were also professional leagues, and then Castro comes into power and he gets rid of the professional leagues. And so now it's per se. And so now it's only amateur leagues. But
it's one of the things. Castro makes certain that black and white players play together. Everybody's always looked and said, well, Cuba, blacks and whites. Cuba is just as integrated as the United States. Always has been. They have not been as accepting of just because in their professional leagues they've been able to play together, and they were able to play together before that existed in the United States. That did not mean there was not racism. The first great Cuban player, the first great Latin American player, Dolph Luque, his real name was like 15 words long, but
right.
The Dolph Luque, which sounds very much like El Duque.
One of the most,
heralded in probably the third wave. There have been several waves of Cuban ball players coming into. But Dolph Luque pitched. He won over 200 games in the major leagues. Has gotten a lot of votes for the Hall of Fame. He was the first Latin American player in the major leagues, purely Latin American player. 1 year, I think in 1918, he was 27-8, had a 193. I mean, it's a great pitcher. Pitched in the Black Sox scandal and pitched a couple of games in relief in, the 1919 series.
But that's for Cincinnati, right?
Yes, he was. He came up as a Boston Brave, but went to Cincinnati right away. But supposedly this guy, he was 5'7", but very pugnacious and everything. He supposedly would never accept insults. Now, while he was blonde and blue-eyed, he was a white Latin American player. Players would get on him all the time, and he has a very famous incident he had where police had to be brought in, and there was like a riot ensued. But supposedly it was Casey Stengel, who seems to be president at every great moment in Major League history.
And or significant.
Right. Yeah. Stengel supposedly called him a Cuban N-word. And
Right.
Lukey just runs off from the mound, jumps into the dugout, and starts pounding the crap out of Stengel, to where both teams start fighting. Bats are brought out. Game's over. Now, Stengel said it was Bill Nicholson, who was sitting next to him, that actually said it. It wasn't him. We don't know. It's somewhat apocryphal now, but I mean, it was an incident that really happened. But that's not. Lukey once threw a ball as hard as he could into his own dugout trying to hit somebody that said something. He once chased a player on his own team with an ice pick all around the clubhouse.
Right.
This is a volatile young man, and this has been. We have seen this volatility in a lot of Cuban players that have come along the line. I mean, and this has been a lot of the criticism, has a lot to into the Abreu and Chapman and Oliveira incidents and stuff. Now, is this a cultural thing? I think it may have something to do more with the socioeconomic situation that people are coming from than I'm going to say than the culture itself. I mean, I'm not ready to condemn Cuba.
Right. The hyperbole we want to,
right. I think we're dealing with very poorly educated people coming from a backwoods situation, being thrown into situations that they're not familiar with. Nobody would ever deny that Tony Perez and Tony Oliva and
Tiant.
Yeah, Tiant. Well, Tiant was a little weird.
Yeah, he was a little bit out there. When you think of just...
And today, I mean, Jose Fernandez seems like, a very upstanding citizen,
Oh, yeah, as far as the current crop. I mean, and I have not heard,
Kendrys Morales, have we ever heard anything,
right.
coming from him,
back in the early 2000s, you had Contreras. Mm-hmm. And by all accounts, I mean, that was such a harrowing story of him trying to get his family out of Cuba as well. But
let me say one thing that you were talking about MLB's situation. I mean, there has been a real discussion of where MLB has considered a moratorium on signing all Cuban players because of the human trafficking problem right now. MLB recognizes that they are creating a perilous situation for a lot of young men.
Well, there was beyond that, just to jump in, that Puig was having death threats sent out on him by the smugglers that apparently got him into the country. There's a huge article in ESPN, the magazine, or Sports Illustrated. That gets down to the fan level, that if somebody were to attempt something horrendous towards Yasiel Puig at Dodger Stadium, well, then all the other fans in attendance are in harm's way. So,
right.
So this moratorium has been discussed, but not put up to a vote, I would assume.
Well, I mean, you don't want. I don't think it's gotten anywhere close to a vote. I mean, because the argument is ultimately MLB is saving the lives of several of these players.
That's a good point.
So, I mean, that's a two-edged sword.
There's always the great hypothetical about what if the baseball color barrier never existed and you had Babe Ruth having to face, a Satchel Paige or Josh Gibson being able to hit in Major League. How would that change the record books? As far as Cuban ball players go, because of the tremendous talent that comes from the nation, do you think of that as the untold great what if? Like, who some of the best we never saw would have been a Cuban baseball player? Do you think that records for things like stolen bases and average would be radically different if there was Cuban integration throughout the entire 20th century?
There's been a lot of it, though. I mean, it's not. I mean, Cubans have not been cut off as much as African Americans. I mean, and they're all sorts of history, John McGraw, people bringing up Cuban players and saying they're white, having them try and pass for white.
Lukey being a perfect example. Yeah.
Well, but Lukey was white. I mean, as were Willie Miranda and several. I mean, there were players throughout time. So they just had to get off the island. Cepeda's father, that could have been different, but there. So. That's a hard to say. One of the things that makes Cuba and the Dominican and all these places is that it's a year-round sport. in that kind of climate. And I'm Mike Trout's from New Jersey, isn't he?
Yeah.
Do you think of New Jersey as a real hotbed for baseball? Is
No.
it? No, not at all. Does that mean that somebody from New Jersey can't be a ball player? No. Look at Mike
Right.
Trout.
There you go.
So I think to say that Cuban ball players they have physical attributes that make them better, I don't think that's true. I think they have a culture where they play it year round, and I don't think you would find a lot of Cuban ball players be very good as basketball players per se, even though they may be tremendous athletes.
Well, that's one of the great things about the Cuban passion for the game. It's because they are so in love with the craft, with the tools. It's not about the brute force or the raw physical attributes. It's about how you hone your craft. So to the business at hand, to the dirty business at hand, the teams themselves, the major league teams, how do they get their hands into this mess? I mean, to get a scout into Cuba to scout a Yasiel Puig or a Aroldis Chapman, what does it take to do just that?
There isn't any. That's not happening. But there are movements being made by the United States and Cuba right now to have it where Cuban ball players can be signed directly by American baseball teams, and this would help break down the embargo. They wouldn't have to get some perilous journey to Haiti to be able to come into the United States from there. This seems to be part of our whole new agreement with Cuba, but as I say, Cuba, the United States seems to be a lot more in tune with this than Cuba does.
Right.
Velez is still saying they give up their dignity when they do this.
Right.
And which is a big thing when you have nothing else.
Right, yeah.
And
the nationalistic pride of it comes into play because Castro as well says before that he gets rid of the professional leagues because being an athlete in Cuba, particularly a baseball athlete, is to fulfill your responsibility to your country.
But all of that Cuba is becoming a lot more capitalistic. You have cab drivers and things in Cuba now, and people that have restaurants and stuff. We'll see.
But does the approach that baseball takes with Cuban players, just let's go back to on the field, do we have to make a concerted effort to make the Yasiel Puigs of the world more corporate to fit in better around here, or is it the other way?
I don't think it can be the other way. I think teams need to do more. I don't think that's an MLB thing. I think it's such a personal thing.
Right, yeah.
It's
what's so odd about, interesting.
And I do think that there should be that former Cuban players need to help champion their countrymen, and maybe that's possible by having other Latin American players champion each other. I remember when during the Big Red Machine there was always that Johnny Bench kept all the white players in check, and Joe Morgan kept all the black players in check, and Tony Perez kept all of the Hispanic players in check, and they all blended together and went out to eat together, and there was a mentoring thing by each of these people because so many professional athletes are not as culturally advanced as are people of their age. Often they have been put in this cocoon type of existence where they were made heroes in the 8th grade, and this is an old story, and it certainly exists perhaps or is magnified in third world countries, particularly communist third world countries.
Yeah, that is a true fact. So the issue of domestic violence now. You think fairly or unfairly that it's being synonymous with a Cuban/Latin American problem? Are we just not?
I think that's unfair. I think it is a socioeconomic problem more than it is, and I don't have anything. I don't know what Oliveira's past was. I don't know what kind of culture he really came from, or any of these people. But I think you find this more with people that are not in tune to the progressive changes in today's society.
Sure. I mean, the machismo element certainly is much more rampant in Latin America.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm not just pulling that out of the, thin air. But with regards to domestic violence, though, it is now front and center. Jose Reyes as the poster child, if you will. So this violation is worse than PEDs. It's worse than game fixing, violence, period. I'm in. So is this a one strike and you're out? Like, is that where we need to get to with if a player gets convicted of battery? And you got to think about how the teams they're paying big money to these Cuban prospects to come and play for them. The Braves are going to take a bath on Oliveira.
Sure. That's a fine line. I don't think you can, when you're talking about spousal abuse, it's never, ever acceptable, ever, period. I agree. But spousal abuse is not always male on female, and so that's a fine line to draw.
But
I think if you are convicted of this, then perhaps, if you're convicted in a court of spousal abuse, then that should maybe be one strike and you're out. But Chapman was not convicted.
True.
They settled it, and so what, do we throw him out of baseball because of something that, we've had all sorts of claims made on athletes in the past, and that's just of all sorts of things that they haven't always been true.
Right, and the conviction would be that would be akin to the positive test, right, as far as I'm concerned.
I think so, but it depends to what degree they're convicted, of this, So,
well, yeah, I mean, no two cases are the same in
right,
any transgression against the sport, but should there be a minimum? I mean, that is harsh. A year minimum that you're suspended.
I think so. I mean, to sit and try and figure out.
Well, yeah, I know, and hence, this is the moment where I actually have a little empathy or sympathy for like the Roger Goodells of the world, but it's just the smallest, tiniest amount, because this is their job and they know all the particulars. We are watching right from the general audience. But let's talk about the teams themselves, like the Braves in their current situation with Oliveira, or with Reyes and the Rockies, really, not the Mets so much. Should there be, with the CBA coming up, should it be part of the language that domestic violence convictions void the contract?
I think they're going to try and address this. I don't know about voiding a contract. That's going to be a tough thing to get the Players Association to agree to, any kind of voiding of contracts.
Sure. I would think in an instance like this, though, for the greater good of the game, because we certainly do not do everything in our power for the general baseball population to not go the way of the NFL. But
I still think that may be the one. Voiding contracts is something I can't see the Players Association agreeing to. The Players Association would much prefer punishing the team than the player. Always.
Sure. In general, yes, that would seem to be a mission statement that they would. Right. Maybe that won't be on page 1 of their brochure, but
it will be addressed in some way. There's so much that's got to be addressed in this new collective agreement.
Well, and it's a shame that it overshadows the fact that really it's such an amazing, beautiful thing to watch. The Cuban style of play in between the lines, the fun and the joy of it, coming full circle.
But you also saw it self-destruct in like the last, the World Baseball Classic. You see them, they have long had a history of this, in the Latin American World Series and things where they're just beating everybody and then they just implode.
That's true. So it's not a model that can be sustained fully when you.
No, but it is very fun to watch
when you bring it into the melting pot of baseball. As far as an international game experience goes, where does seeing a game in Cuba, a pure amateur league or professional Cuban league game, rank for you?
Oh, that would be right up there.
Right up there? Would you put it at the top?
Over a World Series game?
Well, internationally speaking, like over a Japan League game or seeing a game in the Dominican or...
it would be, I'm going to say it's going to be right up there. Seeing the Latin American World Series, that wherever that is held, that's kind of a Kentucky Derby type moment.
But I'd have to agree.
But seeing
with the Kentucky Derby type moment,
right.
I agree that it would be like that.
With a regular season game, insignificant for anything other than just a baseball game, seeing one in Cuba would be very interesting.
Yeah.
But as I say, I mean, I just because I'd like to go to Cuba too. That's one of the things. I mean, seeing the game in the Dominican would also be right up there, with me as well.
Yeah. But since I grew up with Mr. Baseball, I still have Japan just slightly higher. So, but that's okay. That's just me. And I'm weird like that. All right. Well, coming into home, I mean, there's so much coming up with this CBA. Do we, considering all that we've just talked about right now and the attendance and so on and so forth, are we headed towards a strike or a lockout?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
This will all get worked out?
I think so.
I certainly hope so.
One of the things right now is they've got to, the CBA has got to tweak this instant replay stuff. It is becoming very annoying to me.
Oh, it's painful. I mean, I was in favor of it, but man, the execution is just so rough. So, right. And mind-numbing. And then finally, Clayton Kershaw to the disabled list. It's a blow as a baseball fan that we don't get to see him pitch at the moment. But how do the Dodgers respond, considering how good San Francisco is and how competitive? If that division gets too much further away from them, do they need to go and get a Tehran, perhaps, like right now, or can they still wait it out?
I think they're looking to be a wild card now. I mean, I don't think there's.
They've already given up on.
I don't think they're planning on catching the Giants. I actually think that the Giants, even though nobody has talked about it, I think they may be the ones that go out and get this Ulysses Guerrilla. Or Guerrilla.
The 50-year-old
right.
Cuban superstar?
Because he's an immediate impact type player, and they have enough injuries and stuff where, and they've certainly got the money. No, the Dodgers have to be very careful with Kershaw. That's just, I mean, that.
Oh, absolutely.
And I would be surprised if they're going to do anything but be very careful with Kershaw.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But therein lies the rub. It's like they need to get. What is the sense of urgency to now have another big pitcher? Because certainly they have resources. They could go out and make a deal right now. But
it's not like they're counting, this is our year. If we don't do it this year.
Good point.
They seem to be planning more for a couple of years from now than this year in particular. So
if their farm system pays off the way it's shaping up to, it'll be a Dodgers world that we're all just living in.
Tehran could bring back a lot. I mean, and Copy saying he wants as much, or more than they got for Miller. But the Red Sox have a lot of big name prospects that are, and they are in dire need of a pitcher.
Oh yeah, pitching staff. Price has just looked terrible.
If Tehran is going to go anywhere, I think it's going to be Boston.
Yeah. And at this point, I'm too numb to care if that does in fact happen. So, all right. Well, thank you as always to everyone watching on the YouTube channel, listening to us on SoundCloud, and on iTunes. You can find everything Running the Bases at runningthebases.com. So follow us on Twitter at runningthebase. Leave your comments, like us on Facebook. Let us know what you would like us to talk about or what you totally disagree with. We welcome all kinds of comments and feedback. But anyway, so for Mr. Coach Bounds. I am Tucker Wells. This is the Running the Bases podcast, and we are coming into home, and we're safe. Coach, you have a good night.
Good night.